Hello, everyone. Good morning and welcome to today's webinar. It's great to see so many people online here joining us. Welcome to our session from Joe and I at the Innovation Beehive on leading remote teams and specifically leading those teams in disruptive times. Over the last 6 months, we have been conducting research, talking to leaders around how they have dealt with challenges, how they've dealt with disruption. A lot of the time they were talking there about dealing with AI, the rise of digital, trying to gather real consumer insight, understanding what their customers needed in a rapidly changing world, and also recalling some of the issues they had to deal with during the Great Recession in 2008. Reflecting on that over the last couple of days, it seems more and more important now and actually more and more relevant around how those leaders and the lessons that those leaders shared with us through our white paper, which we'll share with you after today, around how they've led in disrupted times. So we're going to be sharing some wisdom today from what we've heard from those leaders and also from talking to some clients over the last couple of weeks. We're going to try and make this as interactive as possible over the next 45 minutes. We'll be running some polls, asking you some questions. I see that everyone has found the chat room, which is great. And Vic, yes, you're definitely on mute. And so to start off, really, Joe here is going to work the technology. Just want to check in with everyone, really important now, again, more than ever, to check in. How are you doing? And we've got a bit of a poll here, some options, really. So in terms of how you're doing, are you feeling okay? You're adapting well to this new way of working and leading? Or two, are you concerned that I may not be able to deliver what my team or my business needs within this new way of working and leading? Or I'm feeling very unsettled and can't get my head around this new way of leading and working. And actually, I should probably say, if I asked you this at 11 o'clock and ask you it then at 3 o'clock, accepting it might be different. Because one thing we are hearing, talking to our clients over the last couple of weeks, is they can be, fine at 9 a.m., they can be distraught at 11 p.m., and they can be fine again at 3 p.m. and at 5 p.m. they can have overwhelming concerns about what they have or haven't achieved during the day. It's very flexible.
And sorry, just to say, Mark, as you're answering the poll, feel free to add any comments to the chat box. I can see just about everyone has responded. So we'll end the poll in a few seconds, just give the last few people a chance to respond. But if anyone wants to add any thoughts as we go, feel free to use the chat box to add comments, ask questions. I'm going to be keeping an eye on it, and we'll be bringing those into the conversation too. So yeah, just about everyone has completed it. An interesting comment from Amanda there.
Yeah, Amanda, you're right, Amanda. It fluctuates during the day. I had a call with you this morning, so I came off that very energized going into this, which is great. But, I think it also fluctuates in terms of what external noise and external stimulus you allow in. So paying attention to the news cycles that you're listening to, monitoring the amount of external bad news that you're receiving passively, and actively looking for positive news and good news can impact your state of mind and your well-being as well.
And Vic has made a really interesting point here about, as well as the fluctuations through the day, it also depends on those people who we've engaged with. So, don't let others bring you down, I think is the, that's sort of soundbite one from me for the day.
Even if you're living with your family and or your children who are really getting you down.
Or your dogs.
Let's have a look at the results from the poll.
So you should be able to see the results on the screen now. And do you want to talk
yeah, so overwhelming majority of us on this call feel relatively okay, and you're adapting well to this new way of leading and working, which is great. 63% of people there. And I think actually what we'll find is this new way of working and adapting that we're at to now will change next week and the week after, and we'll need to have much more flexibility in the way we lead and the way we work. 2 people concerned that I may not be able to deliver what my team or my business needs with this new way of working. Absolutely, and one, I'm feeling very unsettled and can't get my head around this new way of leading and working, because there's a real balance between actually the technical functional stuff around going on Zoom, going on Teams, working your way around all these kind of new ways of hanging out in chat rooms and attending meetings like this. And then the behaviors, which is where leadership comes into play. How do you actually behave? How do you carry on having decent, connected conversations with your people? And I think actually more and more what will emerge over the next couple of weeks is how do I continue to deliver the work and potentially manage performance in a remote setting as well?
And just to say to all of you, really, you know, we've been doing a lot of thinking about this. We've been doing a lot of talking to our clients and our contacts right across all different industries. If anyone who's feeling concerned or feeling unsettled, or maybe you get to the afternoon and you start thinking, oh God, I've got this challenge that I really need to get my head around, feel free to reach out to Mark or myself. We're really open to just helping people and having conversations and working through stuff with you. So, you know, feel free to reach out. That's what we're here for at the moment.
Super. So actually, in terms of thinking about what we reflected there and how we're all doing, it might be useful if we shared a little bit around some of the personal challenges that we're having at the moment. So we're going to use another poll here. And this is based on some of the feedback we've been hearing during our coffee mornings. We've been running coffee mornings twice a week over the last couple of weeks, on a Monday and a Friday, virtual momentum coffee mornings, getting people just to check in, catch up, share wins, share some wisdom, and crowdsource knowledge from the crowd over a particular challenge. Over the last few weeks, we've heard a number of people sharing the challenges they're experiencing, so we've culminated them then. Look out for those coffee mornings. We're going to be sharing more details of them over the coming week. But these are what people are telling us are some of the challenges they're experiencing, and I'd be very interested to hear from you, if you could vote and then maybe share a little bit in the chat box around the challenges you're experiencing in more detail. But one, procrastination, just can't seem to get stuff done. Someone was saying yesterday, I'm in more virtual meetings now than I ever have in a whole day. And I used to complain, I get to the end of the day and I start my work. Now I get to the end of the day and I've got to cook dinner for everyone who's next door waiting for me to finish. A lack of familiarity with the technology, feeling like I'm always on, not being able to step away. People are particularly talking to colleagues and clients who are based in London or in other urban cities like New York and Chicago, you know, feeling they're having to work in a hallway or use a bedroom whilst everyone is outside and the professionalism is sitting on a bed, but how can they turn off their phone when it's constantly with them? Too many meetings, a lot of people are talking about that, and I'm having to flex my schedule due to family or other commitments, and I'm finding this hard. So we'll take a couple of minutes for everyone to vote. We've nearly got the full Monty there, and then if you could comment in the chat box. I'll ask Jane to share some of the comments that are coming through.
Yeah, so because I, you know, conscious this is by no means an exhaustive list, and I'm also conscious that I think I've set this poll to only allow you to select one, and I think probably most of us have more than one personal challenge going on at the moment.
Learning, always be better than before. One of our values.
Yeah. But yeah, Sarah says she's concerned about technology and that I'll be more concerned about that than what the content of what I'm doing. That's really interesting, actually. And Mark, I do a lot of graphic design for the business, and Mark always talks about not wanting to be design-led. And I love the design. So, you know, I make these pretty PowerPoints, and Mark comes up with a lot of the content for them. And it is a challenge, the balance between understanding the technology and actually being able to get the right content across in the right way.
And impacting the quality of the content, because actually the content is the most important thing, that the visuals or the technology is the conduit of the content.
Yeah. And Amanda said also get distracted very easily as everything is online. And one of the things that I've noticed when people have done screen shares with me over the last few weeks is the number of tabs they've got open. And I just find myself thinking, how are you coping with that? Helen, working in corporate communication, it hasn't stopped for 3 weeks. I mean, yeah, I imagine corporate comms. You worked in HR for years.
Yeah. So, I mean, absolutely. And internal communications reported into me in my last role as the HR director for Europe. And I talking to colleagues now, and again, talking to Amanda Strange from our HR department, HR and corporate comms are busier now than they've ever been. I was talking to an HR director yesterday, and she says she's getting really hacked off and seeing all these people online who are saying how bored they are when she's now working 12, 13 hours a day and having catch-up calls with Asia in the evening.
Yeah. And Vic has made a really interesting point here about the living conditions of people who are working from home. So someone working in a one-bed flat with a partner, and they physically can't escape each other's work, let alone their own work. And I think you're going to talk a little later about being aware of that in the context of your team, aren't you? So I won't second guess anything you're going to say, but we're going to touch on that point, absolutely, Vic. And Sue talks about always feeling on the go. And I tell you what, we'll share the poll results, because I think a lot of what people are sharing in the chat is connecting to the poll results. So they're fairly broad, actually. And That's an interesting one, isn't it? The second one.
So we all feel fairly familiar with technology, which is probably why you found us in either our coffee mornings or the series of webinars that we're doing weekly, responding to what our clients and our wider network and community are telling us that's important to them. So you probably found us through being tech savvy. Procrastination, not being able to get stuff done. And that might be because I was reading an article over the weekend that was saying often what we do when we're working is the really kind of nutty, challenging issues we tend to work out in connected groups, and we leave those hard bits of work, as it described it, as when we're all together. But it's not necessarily the same, and harder to get everyone together now, and you are having to do a lot more on your own, in your own head. And then that piece around procrastination as well. Well, it's always interesting to see what's going on Facebook, on Instagram, or check your news feed or whatever it might be, or bake that banana bread, whatever we may be doing at the moment, or clean out that cupboard under the stairs that we never got round to. I'm finding actually giving myself some real structure. So, going to work every day, I wear this shirt, I'm dressed in chinos today. I came in and sat in the dining room at 9 o'clock as our designated workspace. We don't work in the kitchen, we don't work in the dining room, so there's a designated place. So when I'm in here, I am at work. I do have the drinks cabinet staring at me, and sometimes it's a little bit too attractive, but I don't go near it. Feeling like I'm always on, that's personally something I feel. And I've started to make a real rule that I tend to wrap up the day for the number 10 Downing Street news cycle. That's the news that I listen to, the news cycle, by 5 o'clock. It's very unusual for me to finish work at 5 o'clock, but it gives me some structure to the day. I may, because we have international clients, particularly in the Midwest and in Chicago, that I might check my email in the evening just briefly, but that gives me some structure. So I'm forcing myself, which as a small business owner is a hard thing to do, to not always be on. Too many meetings, absolutely busier now than I was before. And I see all those people who are saying, oh, I'm so bored, and I have elements of being slightly jealous. And then having to flex schedules. Again, I think it's a really important piece. We're going to talk a little bit around that, but we are working at home. We have our families all around us. And if you've got young people, they need to be fed at 1 o'clock, and you can't say, I've got a budgeting meeting at 1 o'clock, because they need pasta in their belly. And having some flexibility as leaders around that is really important. Anything else come through on the chat?
Yeah, so Shiva said that she's been working from home for many years, and it is intense, but even more so now that we're all doing it. I can imagine, I mean, when I read that, sorry, that was Helen, not Sid, apologies. When I read that, Helen, I found myself thinking, a sort of mental picture of you sort of in a field, kind of enjoying the sunshine on your own, and suddenly a load of children come running into the field and ruin your day. I don't know if that's how you're feeling right now. You've been sort of working from home on your own and just sort of gently plodding along, and suddenly everyone else is doing it as well. I don't know, that's the image I have of people who've been working from home for a long time. Everyone's come and spoiled the party. The thing about too many meetings as well, I think Helen, again, I think it was Helen who said that she works in corporate communications. And I was wondering, is there, and this is a question for everyone, are we sort of throwing too many meetings at people? Are we sort of overdoing it in that regard, or are they actually necessary at this time? And I think that might be, as a leader, as a remote team leader, that might be a question to consider as you go through. Anyway, should we crack on to the next?
Yeah. So what again, talking to our clients and colleagues and people in the wider network, they've been telling us there are kind of 3 areas that are important to them, and I put them out here for our consideration. The first is just making sure, as a leader, that your people really are okay. We've been running daily check-ins with our team. We have one in the morning, and often have one later on the afternoon. And most people got into some sort of rhythm, whether it's every day or every second day. And they usually say, how are you doing? But I think it's very difficult for people to say, I'm not okay. But I think you should almost start from the assumption that not everyone is going to be okay, and really just making sure that you do check in a real genuine way, that it may not be just done in a group situation, that you listen out for clues and indications that someone isn't necessarily okay, and creating an opportunity and a space where people feel comfortable saying they're not okay. Because as we've already heard, working from home has additional pressures. Even those who've been used to doing it for many years have got additional pressure, as you heard from Helen here. But most of us are having to struggle with unfamiliar technology, having to do it in an environment that is our sanctuary, that maybe it was a Friday or a Monday, occasionally we got to work from home and we talked about, I got so much done when I was working at home, I'd love to do that more. Well, be careful what you wish for. But, having children next door, having your dogs locked in the upstairs bedroom and gently hearing them bark in the background and concerned about what they do, all of those brings additional pressures and low-lying states of anxiety that a lot of our clients and our colleagues are telling us about, and again, in our wider network. Alongside that, some uncertainty about our role. So, a number of people in many of our clients' organizations have been furloughed, and clients are talking just now about second levels of furloughed. And maybe, there are people in the organization who believe that they may be furloughed at some point in the future. Whether or not they can survive on their 80% if the organization is not going to top that up. How can they pay their mortgages, their financial responsibilities? Concerns about the wider economy, some existential conversations around where are we going as a country and the global? When will we get out of this? Is it going to be, by the end of the summer? Will it be till Christmas? What will the long-term impacts be on that? And uncertainty around the family as well. Some of the additional pressures. We all love our family, but we having to love them 7 days a week, 24 hours a day in the same room whilst you're trying to do emails and cook banana bread is not necessarily working for everyone. So all of those additional pressures. And I think there's also an important piece here to think about different sort of personality types. So we're going to be running a webinar next week with Nadia Feiner, who is the psychologist, who'll talk about the psychology of being shy. And very much we believe that there's an inclusion and a diversity issue using technology. That maybe the loudest voices, people who are very confident on camera, are the ones who might be heard during this period. And actually diversity is something you really should hold very important during this period to make sure you are really including everyone, thinking about the introverts, thinking about the people who are naturally shy and how you can encourage them to come forward, because it's easier to disappear in a Zoom call of 10 people and not make your point of view heard. So just really checking in a very genuine way, both in a group and also one-on-one, making sure that people really are okay. And to do that, actually formalizing those check-ins and one-to-one. So whatever you've done with the team, if you normally have a weekly check-in, a daily stand-up, whatever it might be, the advice is to do more of it. And we believe there are some positives that may come out of this. We think that there's a real opportunity to connect with people in a more human and a more authentic way than we've ever done before. So, we're seeing our choice of home decor. We're hearing our pets running around. We're having children, coming in and saying, I need a wee, or whatever it might be. All of those things are happening where, we're trying to maintain a professional stance. Yet life is going on around us, often in the room next door, which we may or may not be conscious of. But I think actually all of that invites us to have deeper connections with people. And I think one thing that comes out of it, we will know each other better and we'll know a little bit more about our lives better if there's some positives that we can start to take away at this point. And that whole piece around connecting in, if I think about what was this originally for, this was to make phone calls. And actually reminding people, this is not something to really write emails on. This is something to pick up and have a conversation with someone. Just reminding them that's what a phone is actually for. Not relying on emails. I've heard from so many clients that the number of emails they've had as a leader has increased exponentially. And the temptation is, because you can't just, tap your colleague on the shoulder or walk to their office, that more and more is just shoot out the email. That way, it's done, it's off your checklist, and then you can get on with the next thing. But not relying on emails, remembering these are for actual human connections, and picking up the phone to people. But knowing, because life is going on around them as a leader, they may not actually be able to answer at that particular moment. And just giving people opportunities to really continuously connect. We've heard about people doing these check-ins. We've heard about people doing what we call virtual quiet Zoom work alongside. So we had a team who were telling us they literally, just for an hour a day, all Zoom in and they just carry on with their work. But they're sort of there in a virtual space, working alongside each other, seeing them writing, seeing them doing their emails, hearing them having phone calls, hearing them talking to their partners, whoever it might be, but there's a sense of community that they're building in. And I think we can become a little bit more innovative and not just have Zoom calls when we want to get a point of view over, lead through something, and then give someone a task and disappear at the end of it. And we found our virtual coffee mornings very, very successful, where we've invited our community members to come along, talk about their challenges, share their wins, share their wisdom. I've heard of clients who are doing pub quizzes in the evenings with people who are in isolation, and just finding more innovative and more human ways to check in. But I think that those teams that will be most successful and those organizations that will truly thrive in these times are the ones where their leadership steps up to the plate. There is a real opportunity at the moment in these massively disrupted times to show what we call Leadership 4.0, a new way of leading, focusing on leading in head, leading in heart, leading in habit, and leading in health, ultimately to create history. And this was based, as I said, on research that we've run with a number of leaders over the last 6 months. And we've spoken to some recently over the last couple of weeks, just to kind of bring this really bang up to date. So I'm going to share with you, just top line, each of those elements. So in terms of leading in head, the most important thing here is around, and we're kind of, a lot of us are here at the moment, is around making sure that we have the IT basics in place. You know, a couple of weeks ago, we were all saying, my goodness, I'm talking to some of our clients, only 50% of their organization actually had laptops. There was a basic IT infrastructure that had to be in place. You know, I know that Zoom has doubled in value over the last 10 days. The amount of people that's gone up on using Microsoft Teams has gone up over 20 million subscribers to Microsoft Teams. There was a piece around just getting the kind of hygiene basics of IT in place. And then making sure you put regular structures in the team for your own life and for the team. And that piece around your own life is important as well. So saying, I will have a break for lunch. I will set myself an off time to finish at the end of the day. I will dress for my day. And if I'm having a series of meetings and I'm going to work, I will wear what I will wear for work on that day. So I feel, even in my own dining room, that I'm at work. And putting those structures in for the team, whether it's daily or twice a week, coffee mornings, check-ins, whatever it might do. Again, also, jobs needs to be done, work needs to carry on. We may have paused a little bit as everyone sort of set up their Zoom accounts and those sort of things. But now I think, you know, second weekend after lockdown, people are starting to get used to this new normal, and work needs to carry on. So working out as a leader how you manage workflow, whether it's using something like Slack or other tools that are available to manage your workflow, and to start thinking about how can I distribute the work amongst people across the team, not just those who are the most vocal or the most apparent on our Zoom calls. Alongside that, and we've been working with Amanda Strange at the HR department for our team, understanding that the regulations, the health and safety implications, and the HR basics around having people at home, checking in on people, making sure that you know that people who are furloughed, all the conditions around that they're not at work for you. But there's been an awful lot of HR and health and safety stuff that we've really had to get up to speed in very quickly, and also knowing that we don't necessarily know all the answers. For example, still, even though regulations, new information came out last night, we still are not completely clear about how holidays will be treated during furlough leave as well. And as I said earlier on, not relying on email. As soon as you have a thought, thinking, right, I've got to get that over to Joe now, boom, and doing an email. Just restraining yourself a little bit, picking up the phone, having genuine human connections with people. And also resetting and readjust your expectations around work times and output. So as people are beginning to work out the rhythm of their day and negotiate that with their families and their partners, as a leader, having a genuine and open conversation with them around how do you best need to work when you're working from home? Is it you'll do an 8 till 4? Is it that you'll do 11 till 6? Is it that you have to do slightly shorter hours at the moment? Will you go offline at 1 o'clock in the afternoon so you can prepare lunch for your family every day? You know, I was listening to somebody yesterday who was telling me about how they have just an agreement that between 8 and 9 every morning, everyone will be on their instant messaging. You can't call anyone because people are going to be doing breakfast and stuff, but you can just message someone and you can just check in, you can check with people, ask any information, set up what you might need for someone during that day, but also acknowledge that probably at that time they'll have other commitments they need to have as well. So leading ahead is about getting those basic structures and processes in place. The second bit, practice, of Leadership 4.0 is about what we call leading in hard. And within this, it's really important to try and understand what's important to your team right now in this moment. So actually, it could be that that changes over the course of a week or over the course of a day. So creating a space where you are checking in one-on-one around how things are going with them. Maybe you're going to have a weekly catch-up. How did your week go for you? And structure that, put a time in for it, and just have an open space for people to have a conversation around what's important for them and to start looking forward to what might be important to them next week, understanding what's going on in their lives and how that impacts on the performance and what they can deliver for you. Because if you don't have an understanding of that, what then could happen is the low levels of anxiety could then tip over into stress. I think it's important also that leaders create a space where it's okay not to be okay. Brené Brown talks a lot about the courage of being vulnerable. I experienced this myself a couple of weeks ago. I had a day when I really just was not myself. Now, my nickname at my last job where I was an HR director was Tigger. So I was the most energetic, the most bouncy person in the organization, and I just happened to be the HR director as well. But that Wednesday, I really just couldn't cope with the world that day. It's not like me to go and have a sleep in the middle of the afternoon, but I did. And I told my team that I was having a really tough day and I'd have to take a bit of time out. And then the next day again, I addressed it and said, I had a really rough day yesterday. And actually a lot of people talked to me then privately about how they were feeling and how perhaps on some of our Zoom calls, they've been a bit perky when actually they weren't feeling perky. So by making it okay to not be okay, I allow people to be genuine, authentic, and connect honestly about how they were feeling. Now, as a leader, you've got a balance there because someone like me, who's naturally quite, energetic, if even I'm suffering from a lack of energy or feeling slightly down, that could, if it carried on for too long, perturb the team, make them feel anxious and think, goodness, if you're in that state, what's really going to be happening or what's going on? So there's a balance there, but I think a real opportunity to be honest and open with people, sharing your own experiences, and at the core of this, being really authentic with who you are as a leader. And make it a bit human, using humor and develop certain rituals when you're having your meetings online. One of the things that we do is we share what coffee cups we're using, chin chin, or what teacups we're using, and we like to have a bit of an open hello. Everyone gets to wave to each other. Should we do a bit of demonstrate that now? Can we go on gallery view? Can we share that? You can't on this one. Webinar. So in our meetings, we share teacups. We talk about and we get a wave to each other. Joe runs church on Sundays. We have a big open bit where everyone gets to say hello to each other. But using humour, not trying to take it too seriously, commenting on oh, that's an interesting choice of decor that you got there in the background. Again, making it human, leading in heart. The third element of Leadership 4.0 is what we call leading in habit. This has always required agility and innovation and people having to flex their working styles, but this is more important now than ever. I think one of the things that's really important at the moment is to understand what you can control and know what you can't control and actually name that out loud. So there's a great image that Joe found on LinkedIn around I can control the time my meeting starts. I can control how much sleep I get. I can control my exercise, how much water I drink. I can control my diet. I can control the physical environment that I'm in, but I can't control what's happening in the economy. I can't control how other people are feeling. Vic's point around being impacted by the negativity or positivity of others, you can't be in control of that. But naming out loud that you can't be in control, that you want to have more than one walk a day, by naming it out loud and saying what you can't control and knowing what you can control, I think you're going from a place of real power and being able to cope with it. I also think that when you're thinking about the way you interact with your employees, think about it the way you might think about your customer or end user. What is their experience of your Zoom call, your daily lineup, your meetings, the webinars that you're running? Think about how they might feel, what their emotions might be, and what journey you're taking them through. And I think it might be a useful exercise to actually map out the number of interactions you have with them, What are your desired outcomes? What are you currently doing? What emotions do you think you're actually triggering in your team? And what emotions do you want to trigger? And have an honest conversation around, if I was to create the perfect employee/customer journey out of my interactions as a leader, how might I be able to do that now? But knowing that whatever you do, you might miss out on what we're calling the silent potential. Be really aware of something called distance bias. Often when people are running remote training programs or doing everything virtually, it's very easy to miss out on people. Those who don't necessarily lean forward naturally can tend to be overlooked, they can tend to be unobserved, and their voice isn't heard. With over 10% of the population saying out loud in recent studies they are shy, and more coming on that next week, it's more important than ever to be really aware of distance bias and make sure you don't miss out the potential of those who perhaps aren't quite so vocal on these calls. But even if you put some structures and processes in place and you know what you can control, and you're thinking about your interactions with your employees as a bit of a customer journey and checking in with those who might be a little bit quieter, a little bit more shy or introvert, know that what you've done this Wednesday won't necessarily work the following Wednesday, because our emotions change, structures change, government policy will change, the virus and its impact on society is changing, and we will need to know that what we will have to constantly adapt. And within that, it's okay to fail. It's okay to get things wrong, as long as we're trying. And a great inspiration that we use in our innovation programs is called the Lean Startup. Build something, test it, see if it works, learn from it, and then change it if your customer doesn't respond to it, or if you think there's a new need. So our coffee mornings up to this point have been twice a week. We're having a conversation now, listening to our clients saying they are attending lots and lots and lots of meetings. Maybe we should reduce our coffee mornings to once a week to give them, real focus. Again, we didn't get it wrong to have it twice a week, but now we're changing it, listening to what our customers and our network requires, potentially to once a week going forward. And the fourth practice of Leadership 4.0 is what we call leading in health. And this is all about understanding that there are at least 3 areas to be aware of: your physical health, your emotional health, and your mental health. There's some great work by a lady called Sarah Milrow, who has written a book called The Shed Method. I thoroughly recommend it. It's about how to make better choices. And she talks about what you can control is around your sleep, your hydration, your exercise, and your diet. To make sure that you're not always on, try and find a designated place that you can work. Even if you're working in a 1-bedroom flat, where is the part of the table that you sit at on a daily basis, so that you have a ritual and a practice that gives you some structure, so you know that you're controlling, again, what you can control. That allows you then to stop being always on, because once you move away from that space, you're no longer at work. When I'm not in the dining room, I am not at work for the Innovation Beehive. I come in here when I need to go to work. And just be very mindful also as a leader of your own well-being, making sure you're checking in with yourself, making sure, most leaders, over 70% of leaders, when we were doing the research for Leadership 4.0, told us they had some sort of daily ritual and practice that helped them promote their well-being. Making sure that you don't spend so long checking in everyone else, mapping your customer journey, and making sure everyone else is okay, that you then tip over and your own well-being suffers as well. So I'm interested in which of the practices you're finding most challenging at the moment in Leadership 4.0. Got a bit of a poll coming up here. So is it leading in head, business fundamentals like finance and strategy, giving your team the tools they need to do their job? Is it leading in heart, seeking to understand the impact of COVID-19 on your team and sharing the impact on you? Is it leading in habit, adapting your ways and experimenting with structures and processes, feeling in control of what you can control? Or is it leading in health, being conscious of your team's emotional, mental, and physical well-being, putting practices in place to support it?
Feel free to add any comments to the chat box as well.
So we've nearly got everyone voting.
But everyone has voted. Maybe give it a few more
couple more minutes. And as Joe said, any comments to help us enlighten around which of those 4 practices you're most struggling with at the moment?
been open for a while, so I think everyone who's going to respond has probably responded. And here we go. Here are the results.
Super. So actually the business fundamentals, the kind of practicality, getting yourself in a place where you have the tools and techniques, a couple of weeks into this, I think we all have familiarity of Zoom and Teams or WebEx or whatever we're using. Leading in heart, understanding the impact of the team and sharing that impact on you, a couple 20% there. Leading in habit, adapting ways of working, experimenting, again, 10% there. But the biggest piece is around being conscious of yours and your team's emotional well-being. And that's what we're hearing actually significantly. There's a lot of stuff online there, Joe Wicks in the morning, etc. But actually, what can people do to be in control of their own well-being ongoing, that may be more than just watching a Joe Wicks? I think the fallout of COVID-19 won't just be the economic fallout, it will also be the mental health fallout as well.
Yeah, and I think it'll be quite valuable actually in the follow-up email. I'll share that visual that Mark was talking about the spheres of control, because there are things that we can control. And I remember, I think it was the Deputy Chief Medical Officer was saying that actually when you tell people they can only do something once a day, they're more likely to do it. So a lot of people are getting more exercise now than they used to. I certainly am, and I'm really making the most of it. That's just quite an interesting observation, that's something that's in my control. So I'm absolutely making the most of it when I can.
Vic's made an interesting comment here. So leading in health is a real wake-up call. People are at different stages, even if they've had a mild case, many have had COVID or loved ones at risk. The sheer level of anxiety is huge. The importance of checking in a lot is huge. Trying the Evermind app at the moment, really helpful mental health resource. Oh, maybe we can have a look at that actually and send it out the link. Thanks for that. And we're going to take a little photo of that. So we've got that. Super. Lovely. Great.
Thanks, Vic.
Well, the fifth practice for Leadership 4.0 is what we call create history. That we will all, as leaders, have to make some tough choices over the next couple of weeks. We may have had to make them over the last couple of weeks. We had to furlough some of our team, which was really regrettable and very difficult and very sad. But being transparent and sharing what you can share at the moment you can share it, I think helps to reassure people. Again, one of our teams said to share what you can share with us. Be open, be honest, share the numbers, share the data, share what your thinking is. And also learning that it's okay to say, I don't know. Because, people ask you about holiday entitlement, we don't know. We think this is what the guidance is. There's so many things that are moving factors. And as leaders, we might struggle because usually we're the people that have the answers. So feeling comfortable saying, I don't know, this is the facts that I know at the moment, and I will get back to you with more information, or I still don't know at a particular and agreed date. But I think really important is once we get through this, and we will, and we emerge blinking into the light, we'll be remembered for how we behave now. If we treat people with respect, if we genuinely check in with people to try and understand their emotional, their mental, their physical well-being, and we have the time to put aside for people on one-to-one check-ins, that will buy us a lot of trust. And certainly if you're in a client services situation, spending time just checking in with clients, not trying to sell necessarily, checking in, making sure they're okay, recognizing that they are human too, you'll be remembered and you'll have a much deeper level and relationship going forward. There's a lovely example, I think, of a CEO who's done this really well. So this is a chap called Arnie Summerson, and he's the CEO of Marriott. You'll see, you can have a look at, we'll send the link in later on. It's a 5-minute video, I didn't want to share it. But he made an amazing video to staff. He's going through cancer treatment at the moment. So the first thing he said is, yes, I've lost my hair, but that's expected. And as a leader, there were some lessons that I took from his video to the Marriott community. It was one, he made it personal. He talked about how it was impacting him, and he talked about some individuals in the organization who are impacting. He also then, as a leader, acknowledged those who are bringing and giving support, thanking the health services, thanking colleagues, franchisees around the world who've been supporting and making sure that everyone is okay. 3, a lesson from Arnie was about being really honest and open around about what's happening in the business. This virus has decimated at the leisure and hospitality business. And he was very honest about that. And having a CEO have that level of transparency could be shocking and frightening, but actually was relatively reassuring because you trusted in him as a leader. And then share what steps you are taking. So this is the situation. I'm being honest and open about the business, but this is the steps that we are taking to the best of our knowledge with the best information we have now to deal with this situation. And finally, trying to share some good news at the end. So leave people with something inspiring, something positive to go away from an interaction with you. So 5 lessons from the CEO of Marriott. 1, when you're talking to someone, make it personal, share how it's impacting on you, them, or colleagues they know. 2, acknowledge the support that's going on around. 3, be open and honest about the business. 4, share what steps you're taking. And 5, try and end with some good news as well. This is about real, authentic leadership, as Vic said in the comments there. And people will remember you for how you impact on them now.
And like as Mark said, we'll send the link to that video. It's on YouTube, so you'll be able to watch the full thing on YouTube.
So we've got a couple more minutes left. I'm just interested from the community online here. Has anyone seen an example of great leadership during this COVID-19 crisis? Anyone either seen it personally in their organization, maybe something in their community, or something they've seen in the news? It'd be lovely to hear some positives and where people are demonstrating great leadership during this crisis.
And as you're reflecting on that, I'm just going to share some more comments that have come in. So Lucy, when thinking about leading in health, has said it's really easy for me to focus on what others need and leave my own well-being out. And she's recommended an app called Headspace, really useful for my me time sort of meditation app. And I'll mention that in the email that I send out after this. I use Calm, and it really helps me get to sleep at night, which is great. And then Vic has mentioned that she sees create history as a really positive way to think about both what you do now and what happens next. And I think that's a really nice way of thinking about it. And she also mentioned, you know, that the example Mark just gave is authentic leadership at its public best.
Yeah, Arnie's going to, I think, be an exemplar of how to lead through this example. Yeah. Has anyone else seen any great examples of leadership during the crisis? Well, we should then be examples ourselves. If we haven't seen any, let's make sure that people are talking about us. Oh, Chief Medical Officer and Scientific Officer. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
It's that sense of just being there with the facts on a daily basis, and also elements of interpreting the facts in a really honest way. You know, when they sort of say there's green shoots, but we shouldn't be too optimistic. And when they say honestly, this isn't about, you know, just because there's been slightly fewer cases or slightly fewer deaths doesn't mean that we're over the peak. Be realistic here and be honest about what the facts mean. And Vic has said Sainsbury's CEO giving regular emails and lots of responsive communication, also quite a human approach. Yeah. Oh, and Joe Wicks.
Yeah, he is a legend.
What a legend.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because I do think there are probably some opportunities that will come out of this as well as leaders for us. So, as I said, it's an opportunity to really build trust with our employees, with our colleagues, and with our customers. To form closer and more authentic relationships with our colleagues, our customers as well. To be more conscious around including people who may have been maybe introvert, slightly shyer, and making sure that we think about how we are ensuring that a diverse point of view is being heard in this new technology. And adapting and learning new norms around new ways of working. You know, often, for example, as a business who sells a lot of training, when we've been trying to sell virtual learning in the past, it's always seemed second best, partly because it's usually been sold with sort of health and safety. It demands a lower price premium, and people always see it as something they don't, you know, they have to settle for. Actually, new ways of working around digital learning can be an amazing experience if you now understand the full functionality of all of the techniques available. And actually, that whole piece around giving people more flexibility of how they work, where they work, and when they work, the new norms around ways of working, I think, once this crisis is over, will significantly change expectations. And there are potentially new business models. We're part of a wider entrepreneurs network where people are pivoting their business. They're not just moving businesses online, which everyone did in the first couple of weeks, but looking at new opportunities, new business models as a way of reinventing and reset their business. Because out of this, we believe as leaders, we will have different expectations to serve, both of our customers, our consumers, our employees, and ultimately the role we play as leaders in the wider society. Those questions will evolve. There'll be more opportunities coming over the next couple of weeks. And as we hear and codify them, we'll share them with you. Also, after today, you'll receive an email from Joe, which will share our Leadership 4.0 white paper, which we published just before we went into the crisis. We're updating it at the moment, actually, and thank you so much for your comments today. I will include them in there, and I'll acknowledge who attended today as part of the community that will do Leadership 4.0 version 2, dealing with disruptive times of COVID-19. So look out for that. But after the webinar today, you'll receive our Leadership 4.0 Leading in Disruptive Times version 1, and know that you've helped create version 2 through your interactions and your comments on the call today. And then I'm going to hand over to Joe to close and tell you about our WhatsApp group.
So yeah, thanks all for joining. So I can see you found it brilliant. That's really good to know. Thank you. I just want to mention that we have a WhatsApp group, which is for people who are working virtually, people who are leading virtual teams. It's a place to share best practice and ideas around how we can work better in this context. All you need to do is put your phone up to the QR code on the screen, and you'll be able to, with the camera open, obviously. I say obviously, you may not have known that. So you need to open your camera, put it up to the phone, put it up to the QR code, and it'll offer you the opportunity to open WhatsApp, and then you will be a member of the group, just like that.
And we're just sharing information, building a community. Sometimes there's some funny things are being shared, funny memes, some videos, sometimes articles, sometimes tips and advice, information on webinars that are useful, and just building a community. So thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. Look out for our coffee morning, which I believe will be next Tuesday. Have a wonderful bank holiday weekend when it comes. We're actually going to have a bit of a break from this. Take care, be safe, and we'll see you online soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.